You are now listening to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast.
Wait, the answer was add 10 gallons?
Add 10 gallons.
My first thought was we got to put Actigel in it.
Yeah, great.
Truck's on the way. On the way.
Yeah, okay. I've got two observations, neither of which are really educated or well thought out. Which are like most of my observations are.
There aren't a lot of problems on a job site that can't be solved with a sack full of biscuits.
Today's episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast is brought to you by Actigel 208. Actigel 208 is a high-performance additive for the concrete industry that is greatly beneficial to the producer. It enables them to increase the percentage of manufactured sand by up to 100% and completely replace all the natural sand in the mix. In areas where natural sand is scarce, inconsistent, and expensive, this provides a huge benefit to any ready-mix company out there. Benefits of manufactured sand and concrete include consistent air content, improved compaction, and increased density. Now, in the past, the downside of using manufactured sands was that they were hard to pump, hard to place, and hard to finish. Well, Actigel 208 solves all those issues. By improving suspension, stability, and the quality of the cement paste in the mix, Actigel overcomes the old issues with manufactured sand and leaves them behind. Let Actigel 208 improve the quality of your mix while saving money on every yard you produce. For more information, visit us at actigel.com. That's ACTI-GEL.com.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We are back to our regularly scheduled program here with the 18th episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. We've been to Canada for weeks, came home, we went out to the World of Concrete, saw and conquered everything there was to see out there, and now we're finally back. We're back in the studio, we're back to having an actual scheduled guest, and we're back to the original format, and we're back to having the guys here with me. Paul, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I enjoyed our World of Concrete wrap-up video, so I hope everybody's checked that out. And I like how you list your recent ongoings. You skipped right over all the customer trials we did in between that. Like, that's not the biggest, most important part of our job. We're just like, yeah, we're everywhere, whatever. Here we are. Let's roll.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Joey, what's it like being home and being back to the regular grind?
It's good being home. I didn't have to go to Canada for a month like you guys, but if you go to Las Vegas for most of a week, that's good enough for me. I'm glad to be home after that.
It's been a lot of fun, but it's been a little bit over a month since we've had an actual scheduled guest on the podcast. Colin Lobo was the last one we had, and now for this, episode 18, we have Adam O'Ray from Multicrete. So we'll get into his interview here later, but first we got some stuff to touch up on, some current events and some things that are happening in the landscape of the concrete industry. So one last time, we're going to talk about trade shows once again and committee meetings and so on and so forth. They're happening in person again. So we just got back from World of Concrete, and coming up in October in the great city of Atlanta, Georgia, the ACI is going to have their in-person convention.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that other people are coming back in person. It's opened this country wide up.
Yep. We're getting back to it. October 17th through the 21st at the downtown Atlanta Hilton. The ACI Concrete Convention will be in person and like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, well, some of us on this call here are going to be in Indonesia. Well, maybe not in October.
Late August?
Yeah, August, maybe September. We'll be in Indonesia. So, yeah, I guess we'll be back in time for ACI.
Solid. Yeah. Well, yours truly is supposed to get married on October 4th of this year. So, you know, if I got to go to Indonesia, I might just have to push that wedding back another year. No big deal. I've been dragging my feet for a decade now, so what's another year?
And Joey thought he was going to have a hard time convincing his wife he needed to go to Indonesia for 3 weeks. You're supposed to get married.
Yeah. Hey, we got good news, bad news. Good news, you don't have to see me for 3 weeks. Bad news, you have to wait another year.
Yep. Got to push it back a year. Sorry. You can't schedule it for the next month. It's got to be a whole year.
Well, that's how those reservations go with the weddings, right?
Yep, I'm surprised. Well, we couldn't have a wedding last year because of COVID, and I was really surprised that we were able to even have pick up a date the following year, because everybody from April on got canceled last year, and you have people that were already set up for 2021 and 2022. Like, I'm surprised they even found an open spot for us, but they did.
Where you headed?
Yeah, I was about to say, you got to tell everybody where you're going to get married. It's not like, you're here.
Positano, Italy is where we're getting married, on the Amalfi Coast.
That just sounds like they'd have good pizza.
Yeah, they got good everything out there. Good wine, good pizza, pasta. It's great views. It's a beautiful place. I've never been. Sam has, and I think that's part of the reason why we're getting married out there rather than somewhere else. But we're supposed to go out there a couple weeks early and do like the honeymoon vacation stuff before the wedding. But we'll see, man. Might be in Indonesia instead.
Yeah, you'll be backpacking Actigel up the mountains of Indonesia, brother.
Yeah. Oh man. But anyway, what else is going on in the world of the concrete industry post COVID? Joey, speaking of, you got something good for us here. I'm excited to hear about that.
So as we all know, COVID has negatively affected most everything in our lives for the past year and a half. The one thing that it didn't really affect was the overall drug test positivity rate for marijuana in the workforce.
You don't say.
As many people as were off work, not doing anything, the workforce was lowered. The percentage of positive drug, or I guess marijuana, I guess it was just marijuana tests, that stayed pretty constant. So in 2019, the overall marijuana positivity rate for drug testing in the workforce, it was at 4.5%. Well, in 2020, it dropped only 0.1% to 4.4%. So we're staying pretty steady. 2019 was actually a 16-year high for that rate. So after 16 years, the positivity rate in 2019 jumped, to 4.5%. As we all know that, marijuana is becoming legal, in a lot of states. You may still have, it may be medicinal marijuana, and then occasionally the recreational marijuana. So you may still have, guys that are, smoking on the side, and boom, you get popped a random drug test, and there you go. Your employer. I know some employers that kind of give a heads up on the side for those random drug tests, because maybe some of their best operators, maybe they do whatever they want to do on the weekends, and they don't need to lose those guys for however many weeks because of a positive drug test. But there are some other stats. They broke it down to the federal workforce and the general, I guess, the civilian workforce. They broke those down into their own rates. The federal workforce in 2019, that positivity rate was 2.4%. So if you're a federal employee, if you know federal employees, 2.4% of those people are probably high while they're doing their job. And if you're in politics, there's no telling what kind of drug rates those guys.
Well, you only tested for marijuana, so.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
You get that good politician money, you could probably afford better drugs and weed.
Yeah. They didn't test for the white collar drugs, did they?
No, sir.
But then, you got your county local level guys where they get the local meth. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, speak for Tennessee all you want, brother. We're high class up here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
No, Baltimore's high class. Come on.
I just love that if HR at Active Minerals actually listened to our podcast, Joey would be signed up for that random drug test right now.
Hey, clean slate as far as drugs go. Bourbon and cigars, I mean, that's pretty questionable. But yeah, so the 2019 was 2.4%, 2020 was 2.2% for federal workers. It's still 10% higher than that 2016 rate. And they kept comparing it to the 2016 rate, but I never found that number. So I guess they were just trying to hide it or something. I don't know. The general workforce in 2019, the positivity rate was 5.3%. The 2020 rate was 5.5%. So we're still holding steady, and that was 12.2% higher than the 2016 rate. So That was pretty interesting to see that, we're still holding strong in the weed department, in the workforce, and that COVID has not yet affected that part of our lives.
Those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those numbers up.
I'm not a fan of the weed, right? Like, I don't do it. I don't want anybody in my house doing it. But I'm a big believer that, like, man, whatever you want to do when you're away, as long as you're not hurting anybody else and you still show up to work clean, sober and productive. Like, I don't really care what people do outside of their time.
Show up and do your job. And that's a great point. And that's something I wanted to bring up too is, you have new states all the time coming on board saying, yeah, we're going to legalize marijuana for medicinal purposes, for regular consumption purposes. It's all over the map. It's becoming less and less regulated all the time. But in today's climate, the construction industry is no different than any other employee-driven industry out there. They're having a hard time getting people to come to work. So if you're giving out these drug tests because it's quote-unquote company policy, and you got some good employees that show up to work every day that are popping positive, what do? You don't fire a good employee this day and age. Like, you are literally in an ethical conundrum there at that point. It's like, so what do? Do I go through with the company policy and say, hey, man, we got to let you go? Or do I keep that guy that keeps showing up to work every day? Do I keep him on the payroll and make this go away?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a strange situation to be in because on one hand, you could have recreational marijuana, which is legal in some, like you said, in some areas. And then if it's legal, beer's legal, liquor's legal, cigarettes are legal. I mean, you can't really put cigarettes in that department, but anyway, you could lay out, stay drunk all weekend and show up Monday morning and still have a trace of alcohol in your system, but you're there on time. Nothing's affecting you. And, the same could go with weed, and your company is then put into a conundrum. At that point, it's just company policy. It's not necessarily if it's legal or illegal. It's a company policy thing. And that just may be something that needs to be revisited for some of these areas or for some of these companies. But like you said, you can't risk losing an employee or losing a week's worth of work from that employee, because they had a good time over the weekend.
Right. Yeah, and these rules are crazy, man. Do you know you have to be 21 to buy tobacco products now?
Yeah. Where?
Everywhere.
It's federal.
Oh, it's
now.
federal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, did not know that. Well, I mean, I remember growing up in Alabama, it was 19. It's like you go to Tennessee, it was 18.
Right.
You're in Alabama, you had to be 19 years old.
Yeah. So it's 21 now. So essentially you could have a 20-year-old employee with a dip in his mouth all day long during work, and chances are no one's going to say anything about that. But then company policy is, even though the state legalizes marijuana usage, company policy says you can't, and you can have somebody getting popped for, a trace of THC in their bloodstream during that drug test. But meanwhile, a 19-year-old can have a lip in all day long.
Right. Well,
no one ever said the rules had to make sense.
I learned a long time ago, you can't be more trouble than you're worth. So,
oh, great point.
Yeah. So if you want to, like Joey, you guys are saying, like, guy pops positive for weed over the weekend, not high at work. We're talking about over the weekend on his own, wasn't causing any trouble. That's what he wanted to do, medical or whatever. But he pops that he has trace in his system, even though he's not high at work. If that guy's super valuable, he's probably not going anywhere. But if you're a knucklehead, you ain't showed up to work on time, not a single time in the last month, and you're lazy and all that. Well, I'm probably gonna let that guy go. But hey, there was a stat the other day. You're talking about people can't get people back to work. They're having a hard time in Pennsylvania right now, even having like children's camps this summer. Like, they can't find enough counselors because people are staying home. You know why they're staying home? Do you know what the maximum benefit is to a family of 4? So a married couple with 2 children are going to earn $120,000 this year in the state of Pennsylvania as household income by just staying home and collecting government checks.
Yep, that's who employers are competing with. You hear that all the time about, the benefits from unemployment. That's who they're competing with. And we talk about it a lot on this podcast, but a kid fresh out of high school, what initiative do they have to go to work and earn a paycheck when you can, wiggle your way into that situation and earn tens of thousands of dollars every year by doing nothing?
I gotta take a minute. I gotta compose myself.
But
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
these small businesses, and make no mistake, almost every concrete company falls in the small business category.
100%.
And small business can't compete with a government that has a license to print free money.
Yeah.
And it's free for the government. It's not free for the tax base,
Yep.
or at least not long term. And so it's a tough situation. And I hate that for our small businesses. But there are a lot of states. In fact, I think more than half the states now have rolled back those enhanced unemployment benefits. And those, in my opinion, those states are going to be the ones that take off and soar. And we're going to see quite the dichotomy between states that held on to those benefits and those that didn't.
Yep, I believe you're right.
I don't blame the people sitting at home collecting the money. And there's some people that it really does help. I mean, because there's places where you can't send your kids where you need to send them. And so you don't have any childcare options for your kids. The schools were closed, and somebody had to be home with the child.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden, you're going to get your entire salary replaced by enhanced unemployment benefits.
Yeah, I'm not blaming the people for taking the money either.
I'm not either. And so there were some instances where that was legit.
Mhm.
But the number of that isn't real, because there was a story the other day where the governor of Montana gave an interview, and he said that there was a hotel in Montana, a very popular hotel, but when COVID hit, we all know the hotel industry was on its knees. And so now it's standing back up on its feet, and the hotel manager is doing everything by himself. He's running the front desk, he's cleaning the rooms, he's doing whatever he has. And he was begging people to come to jobs, signing bonuses, anything to get. And he was getting like 3 applications a month to come back to work. Then Montana cut off those enhanced unemployment benefits, and all of a sudden, dude had 60 resumes the first week that was done.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So my point is like, these things are happening, and we're seeing it, and concrete companies are small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So as they start to compete for that talent, my heart goes out to those guys, and I really hope that they're able to pick up the talent they need in this environment. We haven't talked to anybody in the concrete world about how inflation's hit the concrete market. We've seen it in the building market with wood and lumber. Like, that's been advertised pretty widely on the news, but never talked to anybody about the concrete side of that. You know what? Next time we have someone on here, we need to dive deep into that. It needs to be a point of discussion.
We got to get a numbers guy on here for sure.
Yeah, we got to do it. You know what? I actually, I remember hearing a talk from a numbers guy. He's an economist that is focused on concrete. So you know what? We'll reach out to him, see if we can't get him on here.
Going back to, the government subsidies in those states where those unemployment checks are not going to get rolled back or anything, I wonder if, small businesses would have to just like up their pay to compete with that. And I wonder, if they have to have employees, are they just going to have to pay them more than the government is to get them to come to work because they need them that bad? And then if they do that, I wonder what that's going to do to everything else. If you're competing with the government, let's say, you're making $30,000 a year. That's the equivalent of about $15 an hour and some change, maybe.
Right.
So are these small businesses going to have to offer like starting pay of $20 an hour to get people to come to work?
Well, to put it in perspective, across the street from my race shop, there's a gas station, a Rutter's gas station. Rutter's is a very well-known regional convenience store gas station company. They're offering $18.50 to start. Entry-level employees that work at a convenience store are getting $18.50 to start, with a $500 bonus at their 90-day review.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, and that's downstream. I mean, they're just passing that along.
Downstream.
Well, they're just passing that along to us.
Yeah. Yep. And then down the street, there's a Royal Farms, same exact business model, same exact concept. They're offering the same thing with I think a $600 bonus at 90 days or something like that. So yeah, man.
That's wild. Well, hey, let's get into something that we actually do love talking about.
Right. Please.
And that is technology in our industry. And there is an artificial intelligence that is coming to the cement side of the business. So this was pretty interesting, as there was an announcement made about another round of financing as millions and millions of dollars are getting poured into this company. And it's called Seebo, SEEBO.com. And they've got an artificial intelligence that is actually able to see the inefficiencies in a production environment that is dealing with natural products. So they're looking to take that technology and bring it over to the cement industry. So these guys have already raised millions and millions of dollars. They've gone through a couple of rounds of financing. They just got tens more millions of dollars dumped into them because of the success they had at places like Nestle. And so, they've got quite the setup going. And I know that our listeners are interested in that type of technology like we are. So these guys are able to take massive amounts of data and distill it and tell you where the inefficiencies are, even in a cement making manufacturing process. So, where are the inefficiencies when you're making the clinker, you're grinding the clinker, you're blending your products, like everything. So it takes a whole approach there, a holistic approach, and then says, all right, here's where the inefficiencies were, and they improve your inefficiencies by, let's make up a number like 10%. And they do that through artificial intelligence. And then once they've been established in your business and they find out like what the product's supposed to look like, so they can see like which variables are quote unquote correct values, then they can go in and start making predictive models. So if they see things, so if the AI picks up on fluctuations here and there in the manufacturing process, then they're like, whoa, hey, you need to fix this, change that, do this, because now they're going to prevent the inefficiencies from happening and prevent that yield loss. And I just thought that was one of the coolest things I've heard from in the cement side in a while.
That's awesome. So basically they're taking multiple sensors and just condensing all that information into an algorithm that produces something that's easy to read, track, and follow. And
exactly. And so they're going to assist the cement operators. I'm going to quote here: assist cement operators in reducing kiln feed variance and improve clinker quality, increase the kiln throughput, extend the refractory service life, optimize the pyro processing temperatures along with fuel and energy consumption, plus lowering emissions and associated exhaust treatment costs. And so they're going to look at all those variables, everything that comes in it, and if they get integrated into your system and the machine learning takes place, it'll start reducing all the inefficiencies, which will boost yield and boost quality. And man, that's probably one of the coolest things I've heard of on the cement side in quite a while.
That's awesome. And then, of course, they threw in the reduce emissions there at the end. So
yeah, you knew that was coming.
We'll see. Hopefully, if they truly can, it'll be a lot easier to sell this platform to manufacturers.
Yeah, but you touched on the emissions. So I wanted to hit on another article. And by the way, both of these articles I found are both in the Concrete Products magazine. So the other one I saw is that California cement producers are really trying to go carbon neutral in their operations, and they want to be net zero carbon neutral operation by 2045. So they're giving themselves 25 years. You read these things about having a carbon neutral cement manufacturing process, and it's hard not to want to roll your eyes. It's hard not to want to be like, you're literally burning calcium carbonate. Like,
I literally rolled my eyes. I don't know if you made that comment because you watched me do it, or if that's just if that's just what you do as well. But I literally just sat here and rolled my eyes.
So, great. So I know my audience. So it's interesting because you're burning calcium carbonate. So of course carbons come off of that. So how do you do it? And these guys understand it's a bold goal, and I just loved this passage from it because it is like as happy as they are when they're talking about it. Like, yes, we're going to go to these new, greener initiatives, and all this talk that we all know is just, word salad and all this. And then they actually said in here it was many of the technologies, fuels, materials, and processes for dramatically reducing the industry's emissions footprint already exist, although statutory, regulatory, and permitting hurdles, market acceptance barriers, cost challenges, and supply limitations delay or constrain the deployment.
Yeah, you don't say.
It's like, yeah, that's Thus, why we roll our eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an empty goal. It's something that sounds real nice. If you're the CEO of a company, you can say, well, we're going to be carbon neutral. Or if you're a politician, it's like, it's my goal to help these people become carbon neutral. It's real nice to say. It's easy to say. But when you look into what all needs to take place, one, is it even possible? Two, is it realistic? Because everything, there's pros and cons, ebbs and flows. There's a butterfly effect to everything. So if you are to implement all of the technology you would need, all of the mechanical changes, all of the software that you would need to change, all of the regulatory things that would need to be changed to become cost neutral, is it even worth it at the end? Is it possible? Sure. Is it worth it? Maybe. I don't know, because you are affecting so many other things that people aren't even talking about.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And but I got another stat out of this that I thought was kind of interesting. This article puts out another stat that says 34 state DOTs have adopted Portland limestone cement for use in state projects.
There we go.
And that was way higher than I would have thought it was, because we're big proponents on this show of Portland limestone cement.
Yeah, the 1L needs to happen, man.
Yeah, like you want to talk about a way to cut carbon, not having to use burnt up lime, just use regular limestone, and that replaces 10% of your clinker. I mean, boom, you've just got an 8 to 10% carbon emissions reduction. Congratulations. It's that easy. And at equal performance, right. I hope that we'll start selling that at a equal price to standard type 1, 2, and we can get this thing in the market. But what's interesting is 34 state DOTs. Caltrans is not one of them.
Isn't that something how that works?
That blew my mind. And it's in Caltrans is easy to work with. Our product Actigel is approved on their quality product list. We've done some massive jobs. Hello, Apple. We did some massive jobs that have the Actigel product in it. But so to have an organization that's that open-minded and that easy to work with, and they haven't adopted PLC, like, to me, that's step one. The Portland limestone cement, if it cuts 10% of the CO2 out of the cement manufacturing process, then you've just cut the CO2, the carbon footprint of a yard of concrete by 2.5 to 3%. And you should hang your hat on that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great thing to do. But as we all know, the challenges of switching over to a new cement, you've only got one silo. And if you decide you're going to switch to Portland limestone cement, you are now not running type 1, 2. Right. And you've got to convert every mix over to that. And that's a huge process and a big risk for the ready mix guy. We understand that, but we're advocates for the Portland limestone cement. We'd love to see that conversion happen. I just hope our friends in the cement industry that listen to the show, they know those challenges too, but they want to stick to their guns. They're like, we're going to charge a higher price for this because it's a specialty, and we want everybody to switch to it at the same time because legislation's coming down the pipe. Well, you know what? Whoever makes those small concessions to say, we're going to price this correctly, we're going to push this correctly, and we're going to give favored nations terms to these guys who are going to adopt this early. If you're the one that's actually in the marketplace selling this, you're going to be so far ahead of everybody else when the legislation does come down the pike.
All right.
It blows my mind.
It's almost like they're playing a game of chicken right now. Like, not one side isn't willing to budge. The cement guys are saying, well, you're going to need this eventually. So we can just sit back with our arms crossed and wait for you to come to us, or you can be an early adopter, but we're not going to go spend the extra money to help you guys adopt this now. We're just going to wait until it's a necessity.
What's a risk for them too?
Yeah.
Think about their supply chain. These guys are manufacturing hundreds of thousands, millions of tons of cement every single year, and how much of that's being imported?
Yeah.
So you've got massive contracts that they've probably signed for a certain period of time as well. And so how do you confirm that you've got enough people switching over that you can cut those imports and do this? It's tough, but people are just going to do what they've always done. They're going to work together and they're going to solve it. And that's going to be the first big domino to fall, in my opinion. And it's going to be a question of who's going to be the first to get adopted from a cement side.
Right.
You got guys, whether it's Bootsy or Argos or Mitsubishi or whoever, who's going to go out there and Lehigh, whatever, right? Anybody, Lafarge, Holcim, who's going to be first? Who's gonna get out there and be that person that takes that initiative and makes this thing happen? I'm fascinated to watch it play out.
Yeah. Well, it's something we'll definitely keep our eye on. And if you listen regularly to the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast, you'll know before most people. It's where we got our ears to the ground for that, for sure.
Dang straight.
You heard it here first. Breaking news anytime it feels like breaking.
Yeah. And well, it's like our new YouTube channel. New videos every day.
Except for when there's not.
Yeah, I don't know what we're going to post after our World of Concrete stuff. We'll have to go find something to do.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Hey, actually, you know what? This is a great time to let people know that breaking news. We've been telling you guys we got big things coming down the pike. We can now announce this, that we have hired a video editor. So if you've seen the YouTube videos, that's our new editor coming at it. Check out the latest one that posted today. Actually, there's going to be more on there by the time you probably listen to this. But go back and check out some of those videos. And he's doing a great job for us. And he's going to come on board and help out with the clips for this show and start expanding what we're able to do and offer the audience in terms of video production and video quality. Get these episodes out there. So we've got our own Jamie.
Yeah.
If we got people, and he's encouraged us that if we get into a situation where we need something popped up on the screen during our recordings, we just holler out, Jamie, pull that up.
Two things. It's awesome to have our very own editor and producer. Also, if you're Jamie from the Joe Rogan podcast, like, you're like a household brand name. Like, you're like a Kleenex for a tissue. Like, anytime someone refers to a podcast producer, it's always young Jamie from the Joe Rogan experience. Like, you, sir, have made it in your industry. Congratulations. You are the benchmark.
Yep.
Jamie basically Googles for a living, doesn't he? Like, whenever
He does.
Fastest Googler in the West.
Yeah, he's a professional Googler.
we could all be so lucky.
So our editor actually texted me earlier and told us, like, hey, don't be afraid to shout out Jamie, pull that up.
Jamie,
he was like, I'll make it happen.
Nice. All right, boys. Well, that'll do it for episode 18's current events section. It was nice. It was nice catching up with you guys. Back to the way the podcast was originally made to be. But without further delay, we're going to hop into our guest here on episode 18. It's Adam O'Ray with the Multicrete.
No problem.
Adam, can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome.
All right, good. Because, I think the audience needs to know first and foremost that is a nice beard you have, sir. But maybe I haven't seen you in like 5 years because there's a whole lot of white going on there.
I'm not getting any younger, Paul. I have two boys. They're 12 and 14. I have this little piece of property out here. I'm not getting any younger. I'm trying, but I'm not going to fight it either. I'm not going to get just for men. So it is what it is.
I don't blame you there. That's just more work. Trying to keep the gray away, that's just more work. And you probably got better things to do with your time, don't you?
It backfired on me. I looked like Hollywood Hulk Hogan the last time I tried it, so I swore off of it. No more.
There is George running you ragged over there? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, we've stayed busy through this whole thing. Very busy. There was a little pause initially to try and figure out what we could do, what we were allowed to do. And then it was all, once we figured that out, how to do it carefully.
Okay, well, tell the people who you're with. Tell them a little bit about Multicrete and what you're doing there.
I work for Multicrete. We're, I guess, a Western Canada supplier of mainly dry bulk bag cementitious products, whether it be shotcrete or grouts or dry bags of concrete that we ship up on winter roads, and then they uncover them and pour whatever they need to pour in the spring when the weather warms up. That's primarily what we do. We support mines. We support small communities, remote communities. That's enough.
Yeah, and we met each other years ago. I can't even remember. How did we meet? Do you remember how we met?
One of the ladies in our accounting group was looking for a silica fume replacement, and she stumbled upon your website and sent it to me, and we started looking at it, and we started conversations. And the next thing you knew, you three were in Flin Flon.
Yeah, we went all the way to Flin Flon. So, yeah, for the people that don't know, Flin Flon is a 9-hour drive north of Winnipeg. So that is way on up there.
Yeah.
That's how we met.
So I remember our conversations here at Active Minerals on the front end. We're like, why is this guy trying to send us to Flin Flon? Like, is this a test? Does he not think we're crazy enough to go to Flin Flon? By God, you know what? Now we're going to go to Flin Flon just to spite him.
Right.
And we're going to show him that the Actigel works, and we're going to put it in some shotcrete.
And it worked, and we're still using it. It goes into an awful lot of our product. So,
are we supposed to say full disclosure? Full disclosure, they actually buy Actigel.
Yeah. Well, we can let them know. This isn't a shameless plug, after all. I mean, it's just a great podcast guest that happens to have experience with the Actigel product. That's all it is.
Don't let me step on any toes.
No, man, never. All right. But like you said, shotcrete was the first thing we started playing with when we met you, and you still do a lot of that, right? I mean, you were just somewhere pretty far north the other day doing some shotcrete. Tell the people, when you go to these mines and these remote places, what's a day in the life like for you when you do that?
Get up, go have food at the camp, and then go get the job done. We were up at an abandoned uranium mine, and they wanted to sequester some low-active radioactive material. They weren't too worried about it, but they wanted to bury it, and they wanted to put it up against a wall, so they asked us to seal up the wall. So we sealed up a wall that was about 300 feet long and about 40 feet tall. Had little wraparounds on the end. We put about 200 bags up there.
How do you find jobs and projects like that? I mean, is there they just know to call Multicrete when they need shotcrete sprayed up on a wall in crazy places?
There's only so many, I guess, producers / application teams in Canada for the most part. So if you look up shotcrete, you'll find our website. If you look up mining shotcrete, you'll find our way. If you look up anything shotcrete, we'll show up. We should be one of the first ones. So there's others, but
we're involved with a lot of shotcrete. So we do whether it's mining stuff or bridge repair or whatever's going on. Maybe you could inform the audience a little bit. What are the challenges that you face with mine shotcrete that maybe guys that are building pools or doing bridge repair you really aren't familiar with?
The major one is cleanup. You typically don't have to clean up anything in a mine. You cover it up and you have no waste essentially that you have to clean up. It just makes another road, helps build the road. So doing residential stuff and within buildings, for me, that's the hardest part, getting guys to clean up after themselves and not make a mess while you're trying to do it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I remember the first thing I realized that was a difference was you better plan the project correctly, because you're not getting more material for a while. Like if you need 10 bags, you better have 10 bags. You better not need 11. You better have 10 because you're a long way from where you're going to get those bags. That's cost you a lot of money to get it there.
A previous project was remote. They ordered 150 bags. It wasn't enough. They ordered another 50 bags. It wasn't enough. They ordered another 140 bags. It was more than enough. So now they're sitting on about 80 bags. But it's cheaper for them to sit on it than it is to ship them back. So remote, you're right, Paul. You got to have what you need and more of it.
Yeah, and you need a guy like Adam O'Ray who's willing to work himself to death to come all the way out in the middle of nowhere and make sure these jobs happen.
They treat you pretty good. It's nice to get away from the office, not hammering on the keyboard. Actually getting into the field and doing something it's a little bit of balance, right?
No, we heard that. We appreciate the opportunities to get out into the field, even into the lab sometimes is a welcome break for us. But how did you get into that line of work? Did you start banging on a keyboard, or did you start in sales, or how did you get to remote parts of the country working with Multicrete, doing shotcrete at these jobs?
I guess I stumbled upon an opportunity in the materials testing field years ago, and it started with testing concrete, and it worked to testing concrete in the lab and so on and so forth. And now I'm running a paving lab. And I ran paving labs for about 8 years. And George at Multicrete was looking for a QC tech or a QC fellow. He hadn't had much success, and he offered me an interview. And I went to the interview, and I wasn't sold on it. It would mean that I had to give up my winters off. With the paving, it was terrible to have to work spring, summer, fall. But knowing you had 3 months or 4 months of hanging at home with the kids, soften that blow. So I wasn't really keen on taking a Monday to Friday. And my wife convinced me that I needed a real job and I couldn't be a gypsy for the rest of my life. So I signed up. And I continue some of this gypsy stuff. You got to go where the project leads, where they need you, where you need to figure something out or fix a problem. I typically don't get out for just run of the mill. It's when the guys are struggling, they'll give me a call. They'll try to get me out there. That's where it started.
So that traveling, does it come in waves? Do you typically travel 1 or 2 weeks out of the month? Or what does your schedule look like?
There is no schedule. It's whatever kind of has to happen. I don't get a lot of warning. Sometimes I take less warning than I probably should. I know something has to get fixed, so I'll go. We had an issue at a plant recently, and they asked me if I could jump on a plane. I said I'd rather just drive in the current situation. So I took one of the lab techs and we drove to Edmonton. It's about a 14-hour drive that afternoon. See you later. Got to go. And we fixed a problem, and the problem never got out of our plant. We fixed it at our level. So those are the things you kind of like doing. You don't want to have to, but if you can help your guys out, you do it.
Right. Well, and you're talking about putting out fires and fixing issues and trying to be proactive in some cases, but do issues typically stem from the same cause, or are you fixing QC things or application issues, or are there just like certain restrictions with different job sites? Like what is an issue? Explain what an issue is that you were alluding to.
A lot of times it's equipment issues. You've been out in the field, you've seen it, right? The guys are struggling to move something through a machine. The guys are struggling to fire up the machine. The guys are struggling, whether it's a grout pump or a concrete pump. Sometimes it's just mixing. It's not enough mixing time. It's too much mixing time. You're adding hot water. Why are you adding hot water? There's so many things that can go wrong with any sort of batch of anything concrete related. You just start ticking boxes. This okay? It's not that. It's not that. It's not that. There's other things I do too.
Yeah. You're one of the real innovators, though. Not to toot your own horn too much for you here, but you were always coming up with like some of the most innovative stuff. Where does that come from? Like, what's your process there to find these outside the box things and start trying to work on them?
Well, I can't tell you all my secrets. Largely, it comes from demand from outside, right? I don't sit in my basement and think about new and exciting products. It usually comes from a demand, whether it be an unrealistic strength requirement at an unrealistic time, or they needed to set in freezing conditions and there's no heat up there. Like, okay, well, what has to happen to this stuff? And then when you sort of figure out what has to happen to it and what it needs to do and how long it needs to stick around, then you start playing with admixtures. You have an idea of your cementitious content, and you have an idea of your whatever SCMs you need. And then what do you need it to do? You can, these days, it's pretty forgiving. You can make it do whatever you need it to do if you got enough time and money, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Some things take a little longer. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. That's what we try to do. It comes from outside, and sometimes there's a competitor's product, and you'll have a look at that and see what it's capable of. You read the TDS, okay, it says a lot, and then you get a sample and they're like, it doesn't do this. We can do something that's better than this. And then we'll dig at it, and we'll dig and we'll dig and we'll dig until we've got something that we can, I guess, take to market.
How many guys do you have there in the lab with you that are tinkering?
It was never just me. I always had a couple guys working with me. Now we've got a guy that's got probably 25 years experience. The things that he can remember and just put into practice immediately without having to look it up, or he's a wealth of information. So he's made it easier. This is what we need to do. Can you help me out? And yeah, he can make it happen. And then we've got a couple young guys that have just finished some of their schooling, and they're helping out where they can. We've expanded to incorporate, I guess, some precast, some heavier duty precast elements, whether it be beams, piles, hollow core. So we're checking that stuff out as the production testing, and then when there's time and when there's a demand, we'll tinker in the lab.
So let's go away from some of this crazy stuff. I mean, you've done some really off the wall stuff, but I want to go sort of dig at the nuts and bolts of it. So when you start to design a shotcrete mix, customer calls you and gives you a list of specs and says, "This is what I need. I need to meet, this set time, and these are the conditions, and this is what I'm looking for out of a shotcrete." How do you set out and design a shotcrete mix?
I would say there's nothing new. Everything has been done before. You have a little library of things that have worked in the past, and you build off of that. I don't know if I'm oversimplifying it, but everything's been done before. It's just adding water to cement, right? Just add 10 gallons.
No, I'm not saying it's voodoo. So I'm interested in different people's methods. So I have a method for how I design my mixes, and I'm curious on how other people design theirs. And if your method is that I go off past history, that sounds like a pretty solid recipe. But as Josh and I travel the country, meeting all kind of concrete people, whether they're in the lab, they're in the field, academics, whatever. We meet all kind of people, and I feel like what we learn is that everybody's talent for making concrete is a little bit different, and what appears to be a science ends up being more like an art form. And some people are so good at baking these concrete cakes that they should be given HGTV shows on how to make concrete because they're just that talented at it. And other people probably shouldn't have a job. So it's interesting to see these, and the same way you might want to ask a really good chef, like, man, like, what's your secret? Like, how are you making these dishes that are so tasty? When I meet guys like you, Adam, and I realize that your talent, I want to know, like, how did you bake that cake? Like, what's your process to make this shotcrete the best that it can be? So I got to ask. And even if your answer is you put it in the oven at 425 for an hour and come back, and see if it's done, that's fine. But I wanted to know a little bit of the secret sauce here. What makes you so good, man?
It's fast. Trial by design. You always have an idea of what it needs to do. You always have an idea that, and there's these chemicals that can hold it back for a while, or they can speed it up, or they can do anything. They can make it corrosion inhibited. They can reduce permeability. So that all these things have to be considered. You kind of pick a cement percentage of what the mix is, and then start tinkering in the lab. I guess some guys don't have a lab to play with. Oh, our first trial, we were 87 MPa at 4 days. Well, we don't need that, so we can cut it back. Okay, now we've got our strengths in line. Now what do you want to look at? Is our air good? Okay, they want a little air in there. Oh, well, let's see what we need. And there's a history. You've got this TDS, this series of TDSs. There's no, I don't know. I don't have any secrets for you, Paul. It's experience. It comes with experience, I guess. And being able to take a few risks.
We're not let down by the fact that experience. You bring experience to the table. That's how you've gotten good at designing concrete, is however many years and years of working in the trenches. You just have an idea of what works to solve the customer's problem. And if you don't know it right away, you tinker to figure it out. That's a great answer.
The guy who I work for allows us to make mistakes, and he allows us to tinker, and he allows us to rework. And he's been doing this for 40 years. So if we run into a problem, he's usually got a piece of advice that's going to help us. So I can't take all the credit by no means.
I did have a follow-up question regarding chemicals and all the different options that you have with chemicals today. And you alluded to it being one of the main proponents you can use to tweak a mix. Is, there's so many different chemical options out there that do so many different things. And with your vast experience, is the element of chemicals and the availability of so many different options, is that something new, or is that something that has kind of exploded recently?
I wouldn't say it's new. There's always been some of the basics, but they do seem to evolve a little bit. Super Ps are lasting longer. Retarders have better effect. We're not using human byproducts to retard our concrete mixes. So they've always been there. We deal with, I guess you'd say, all the big players. So I can use brand X and use brand C and use brand B interchangeably within a mix, or have them working together, or the odd time they don't work whatsoever. I got a pretty big cookie jar that I can dig from to make what has to work. So I wouldn't say it's new, but it's evolving.
Are you doing all powder additives? Because we work mostly in ready mix, and so a lot of those guys have never even seen a plasticizer that's in powder form?
We've got everything in powder form. The only thing that I struggle to find is a retarder that's as potent as the liquids. We've got powdered everything else. Everything else. And it's convenient. You're not paying to ship water.
Because everything you're doing is pre-bagged.
The majority of it. We do have a couple ready mix plants, but the majority of our work, yes, is pre-bagged.
Are your ready mix plants strictly sending out shotcrete, or y'all doing it's full service?
It's full service. Yeah, we're set up in small communities in the north, and whether it's a driveway, a patio, whatever, yeah, we're there for it. A lot of those ready mix trucks deliver to the mine as well, whether it be wet mix shotcrete thrown down a slick line or wet mix shotcrete thrown into a transmixer at the surface and taken down to the site. Most of our mine setups have small plants that we've built underground, I guess, to receive and turn our dry product into a fluid mix that they can transport, saving that time. But they're hauling bags down to their plants, or we've promoted and we've, I guess, proven a dry slick line. And I could go on, if that's of any interest, I could tell you a few things about a dry slick line that you may not know.
Yeah, well, most people that are listening to this probably have no idea what you're even talking about, a dry slick line. So let's educate the audience. Go, what is a dry slick line? How does it work? And then I've got a story for you about mine shotcrete going in a transloader underground that you're going to get a kick out of. But you first, sir.
Okay, we produce dry shotcrete. All you really have to do is add water when you get underground. But to get underground, you've got to take it either in bulk or by bags. And in bulk, you may have a tanker, I guess, and a receiving hopper on the surface, and this stuff gets metered down and goes down through a dry pipe and essentially floats on a cushion of air. As it's dropping to the bottom, dust becomes an issue. We found ways around that, and then wear and tear is essentially nothing because there's very little weight to it as it's floating down these steel pipes that are 4 or 6 inch diameter to a receiving hopper on the bottom. The receiving hopper on the bottom is all PLC controlled, and they just push a series of buttons, and it does everything and makes them loaded into their transmixer, and away they go. We feed it from the top. It rides down on a cushion of air, essentially, and right into the plant, down whatever, a mile below the surface if they need to. That's what we do.
When you're putting it down the dry slick line, as you call it, it's steel pipe. How are you controlling that dust? Number one, and how is it not slamming into that receiving hopper at 100 miles an hour and destroying everything?
The WAM dust filters do a fantastic job. I won't get into them, but you create a negative pressure within the vessel that's receiving it, and you filter the air coming out of it. And as far as not breaking apart, use something called a boot, where the material changes direction. You leave a little extra pipe with a cap on it, and the first thing that gets hit is the material sitting in that little pocket before it changes direction. So there's no wear on the pipes because it's just wearing on itself, I guess.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, so you have almost like a small diverted section there that's a buildup of material.
Yep.
And that sends ricocheting in the other direction without destroying the pipe every time it has a bend in it.
That's right. Ideally, it goes straight down the pipe.
Okay, I got a story for you, sir. I was in a incredibly remote area, and they were doing shotcrete in their underground mine. It was a fly-in, fly-out mine out in the middle of nowhere. And they said, yeah, we'll show you a shotcrete operation. And they had a small batch plant on site, and it was basic, bare bones, like pull the levers on the plant to load enough sand and cement, right? And they're just timing like 1, 2, 3, let go. 1, 2, 3, let go. 1, let go. And that was how they got their sand, cement, rock, whatever portions. And that was fine, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and redo their whole shotcrete operation. I'm just there to try and help. And I said, okay, well, what kind of slump are we looking for? They said, no, we're going to get a spread on this shotcrete, and then we're going to put it in the transloader, and it's going to head down. I said, oh, spread. All right. They're like, yeah, we're going to lose a little bit of slump on the drive underground. I was like, oh, okay. Well, okay. What kind of spread are we getting? So they make it. It's a dry batch plant. So they batch it in the drum of a ready mix truck, let it spin for a little bit, and they pour it out. Adam, I'm telling you, it was concrete soup. The spread, the quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes for the audio version of this podcast. The spread of this concrete was the dimensions of the container that they put it in. So they had put it in this square box that had like a several inch high lip on each end of this square box that was like 36 inches from one corner to the other corner if you measured by the corners rather than the sides. And they're like, oh, this one's a 36. it's not a 36 inch spread. This is concrete soup. What are we doing? I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And they were just as serious as could be. They're like, oh, 36. And it's like, oh my gosh, what in the world? So they load the concrete into the Normet. They called it a Normet, but it was a transloader made by Normet. And they screwed the top of it back on, or however they put the top back on after loading the 6-yard transloader. And they're using the transloader, of course, because of the height of the tunnel. They had to get a smaller vessel in there to get it underground. So it starts turning. So the transloader is on the barrel, the hopper of this transloader is on a crawl. It's just barely rotating. And immediately as it starts turning, water is gushing out of the lid on this transloader because it doesn't seal correctly anymore. So it drives underground. It goes like almost a mile and a half underground to where we're spraying. And we get under there, and they go to unload it, and they unload this wet mix shotcrete into a dry gunite hopper, like the one that's got like the carousel, like it's a 6-shot revolver, and each and where the bullet would go in the revolver, it's like you're loading concrete into each one of those, and as it spins around, it should be shooting that dry cartridge of gunite through the line. But they're using it with wet mix, and so it goes through. They're dumping it out, and so we're slumping it back down there. By the time it had made it underground, that 36-inch spread in the pan was now a 6-inch slump concrete in this gunite hopper. And one truck was a 6-inch slump, the other truck was like an 8-inch slump. They were just kind of guessing. They were trying to get as close as they could. And so they're filling this thing up with this loose concrete, and they're just nailing it with like 8 ounces of accelerator, and it's sticking to the ceiling and it's hard as a rock instantly. And it was the most incredible shotcrete operation I've ever seen.
They're the guys working under it.
Yeah, I don't remember really how many sacks of cement was in that thing, but I'm sure it was enough. Whatever it was, that it was incredible that they had designed their mix around the leaky Normet.
That's hilarious.
I'm sure they could have done other things. A little routine maintenance, a rubber gasket. That's why you get called in.
At the end of the day, that's one of the crazier things I've ever seen on a job site. What about you? What's one of the craziest things you've ever seen on a job site?
I don't know, Paul. I've been thinking about it for a while, and it doesn't seem that they don't seem that crazy. Guys loading dry bags into a transmixer or transloader. The back hatch is open. They put in their 4 or 6 bags, and then they had a fire hose. It was a fire hose. It was a 2-inch fire hose. They had the back cap off the transloader, and they just stood there. The one guy had a cigarette. I think you got enough water. Oh, no, we got to keep her going, man. You got to keep her going. And the same thing, it's garbage. It's soup, and they take it away, and it's plugging up the pump. Well, yeah, all your stones are falling out of suspension. You just push all your paste off. Well, your mix is no good. Well, no, our mix is fine. So crazy things like that, are they crazy? No, you just got to help them out. Show them how it can work a little differently. And you usually get pretty good reception unless they think you're coming to change the way they're doing it or throw them under the bus.
Yeah, well, we didn't mention any names here, brother, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Seen it, watched it. It happens more often than you probably want to admit. So that's when we get a phone call. Your mix is no good.
We do see some crazy stuff, and we laugh about it because, like, this concrete, it builds the world we live in. It's the houses we're in, and the multi-level buildings that where they're hotels or or offices or whatever. And they all got concrete, and we've all of us in this industry have seen people that do stuff that you're like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? Like, well, there's no reason to do that. In fact, it's unsafe to do that.
Right.
And still, here we are. We're all still standing. None of these buildings are falling over. And sometimes you just gotta kind of shake your head a little bit.
They're not all standing, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, the New Orleans hotel, that build, that was one, and then the another recent one. There was a precast bridge at a university in the United States.
Yeah.
I don't know the university right offhand. I think I do, but I'm not sure, so I don't want to put the wrong university on.
Maybe it's better that we don't put any other information out there.
I'm here for the common people, and Adam O'Ray, you're one of the people that are uncommon in a common industry, and that's why we like having people like you on. And I'm glad you guys survived the pandemic, because down here in our we have certain states in the United States are a little bit more controlling than others, and the state that I live in was very controlling at first, and including the concrete industry. Shut it down. One of the only states in the whole country that shut down construction. It was pretty crazy. And some of the regulations in Canada can be kind of stringent at times. So I was surprised. I'm happy to hear though that you guys really weren't affected. What were some of the challenges that you did face as you waged war with shotcrete through the pandemic?
I guess the testing and making sure you're not going out to a place and bringing something with you, and then on the return side, getting tested again to make sure you didn't bring anything back. My family and I we're set up to. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. You missed some big events, family, personally, but work, I was able to sort of skip through what needed to be skipped through. Thankfully, dodged that bullet. Never felt ill. Never had a positive test. A lot of testing, a lot. Too many times having that swab thing up my nose so that I could go to some remote mine in the middle of nowhere for 2 weeks, only to be tested on the way home so that I didn't bring it home to my wife and kids and see where it goes from there. That was, I would say, the biggest misinformation. Very early, nobody really knew what we were up against. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of maybe unjust fear. I think that has flip-flopped. We here in Manitoba, this weekend, were given the ability, or it was not illegal anymore, to have guests over at your home. Last week, we could not have any guests inside of our household bubble. So if my mother-in-law wanted to come over for a coffee, no. If the boys wanted to have a friend over, no. It was happening, right? Not necessarily here, but there were people being ticketed for it. I don't know how many other police states are out there, but yeah, there's tickets and fines being issued regularly up here. Not so much in other parts of Canada, but that's the angle our leaders took to try and smarten some of us up. I don't know. It's crazy. It's been wild. And then we watch the playoffs. We can talk about hockey if you want a little bit from Canada.
Yeah, love to. I love your T-shirt, by the way. For the people who are listening to the audio version, he's got a Spittin' Chicklets Barstool's hockey program. He's got a Spittin' Chicklets shirt on. I absolutely love that. That makes me smile. Yeah, we're in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and love to hear your take on it.
Going back to not having any friends or any family at your home and sitting down and watching 39,000 people fill a stadium, it kind of feels like what's going on? How are they there and we're here? So it's taking some adjusting. We'll get over this. We'll get over this. If you guys have gotten over it and you're past the third wave, then it's gray skies are going to clear up, I guess. Watch hockey.
Yeah, and I think you told me when we talked before that Winnipeg really did get hit hard. It really was bad there last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, it got hit typically hard, I think. A lot of communities got hit real hard. We're not going to solve the pandemic issues. Not the ones we're having here, not the ones you're having down there. For the most part, I think most people are trying to do what's best for for them and for others. So,
well, man, my feelings got hurt by Canada pretty hardcore because of the hockey thing. Let me tell you what happened. So Josh and I, as a lot of people listening to the show already understand, we were in Canada for 2 weeks to quarantine so that we could go to a remote mine, similar to you, Adam. Our job requires that every once in a while. So we had to quarantine for 2 weeks so we get up there. And right after we came back, the Canadian government told the NHL players that they could freely travel back and forth from Canada to the U.S., that they didn't have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And I want to know what makes them so god dang special that they get to skip all the quarantine rules.
Because money talks, that's why.
money talks, yeah. I don't know why you're not so special, Paul, but maybe it's that you don't make 5 or 6 or 8 million or 12 million a year to play a sport you love, or maybe you hate it by now. I don't know. It's strange. The rules that they're making are strange. Some of them don't make any sense, but they're trying to do their best. So I'm not going to raise any flags and try to change it. Let's just get through it, and don't pay attention to what's being said on social media, for Pete's sake, because it'll drive you crazy. So,
well, speaking of doing our best, Adam, I mean, we're certainly going to do our best to continue to do our jobs to the best of our abilities, as we know you will do the same. And we really appreciate your time here today. Appreciate the information that you shared with us and the stories that you shared with us. And hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
If it works out.
Very good. Very good. All right, sir.
Thanks, guys.
All right, man. Bye.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. One final thanks to Adam. Thanks to Actigel 208, our presenting sponsor. And thanks to you, the listener, for listening along with us. Be sure to search us out on social media for Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube pages. You can find us by searching Add 10, Add 10 Pod, Add 10 Gallons. And search us out and give us a like and a review for this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend about us. We appreciate seeing those viewership and listenership numbers continue to increase, and we'll continue to bring you content from all over the concrete industry right here on the Add 10 Gallons Concrete Podcast. So until next time, y'all be good.